this lecture to Riders to the Sea, a play by John Millington Synge. Before analyzing this one-act modern drama, which was published in 1903 and produced in 1904, let us first provide background information about theater and its staging realm. What is the difference between drama and theater? The word theater comes from the Greek word theatre, literally seeing place. Drama comes from the Greek dran, literally to do. It is a completed action. The Greeks referred to the theater as theatron, while the Romans called it auditorium, meaning a place where something is heard. This shows fundamental differences in terms of perceptions. The Greeks see, while the Romans hear. Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, defined drama as imitation, mimesis, of human action, praxis, in his founding book, Poetics. Thus conceived, the theater imitates life and gives a sharpened view of the world it mirrors. The terms theater and drama are used interchangeably, but need to be separated. Theater refers to the structure where performances are held and to the actors or performers who enact them on the stage before a public. In his book The Empty Space, English director Peter Brook states that all that is needed for theater to occur is an empty space and someone to walk across that space while someone else watches. This means that theater presupposes only a stage, a performer, and an audience, characters, spectacle, costumes, light, script, and sets. Surely improve the theatrical experience. They are desirable, but not essential. Drama refers to the literary text, to the script itself, but also to the dramatic literature of a given period. We can hence say ancient drama, medieval drama, Elizabethan drama, modern drama, etc. Theater is the final production, that is to say, all the elements which combine to flesh the play out. Likewise, theater refers to the staging team that produces plays. In short, theater is the play's stage version, whereas drama is the page version. And the whole theatrical process goes from page to stage. Theater, as all performing arts, is condensed in time and space. The dramatic text is recorded in writing and is hence permanent, while theater is a life art journey. Theater is ephemeral, being enacted in the here and now. It brings all events, past, present, and future, into the eternal present. A performance is thus more subject to changes depending on audience reception, physical and cultural environment, etc. The earliest origins of theater are to be found in ancient religious ceremonies. Theater descended from the Greek festival of Dionysus, the god of fertility in the Greek pantheon. Ancient Greeks established the categories of tragedy and comedy that still apply today. Theater is a great source for people to get to explore different civilizations. It shows us the various thoughts, philosophies, and lifestyles of cultures. Each time we as contemporary spectators witness a theatrical event, we are participating in theater history. At the core of the theater experience is the chemistry of the actor-audience intimate bond. Playwrights depict the real world with a specific purpose in mind. Theater is meant to enthrall, divert, and ennoble by representing. It is a cultural hotspot which offers enlightened entertainment. Theater thus brings viewers closer to an understanding of a shared human condition. Dramatic characters are constructed by their language, which contributes to scene and mood. Playwrights often distinguish their characters with diction or peculiar ways of speaking. In drama, diction can imply manners, convey action, identify themes, and suggest values. Actors on stage express themselves through pantomime, dialogue, and action. Beyond dialogues, there are basically three types of speeches in drama: asides, soliloquies, and monologues. An aside is a short comment directly delivered by an actor, but not supposed to be overheard by the other characters on stage. Shakespeare's tragedy, Othello, is filled with asides, where Iago the villain voices his inner, mischievous thoughts and feelings to the audience. A soliloquy is directly addressed by a character alone on stage to the audience. A soliloquy is a speech that is meant to be heard by the spectators, but not by the other characters on stage, as opposed to a monologue which addresses someone who does not respond. Narrators are not recurrent in modern drama. They are present, though, in several plays by German playwright and theater practitioner Bertolt Brecht. Narrators may be integrated into plays to provide background details about the plot, setting, characters, or themes. Modern narrators serve a function similar to that of the ancient Greek chorus. Well-made realistic plays, such as those written by Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen, have a plot that possesses organic wholeness. Dramatic conflict, whether explicit or implicit, is the spine of drama. It is the backbone of drama. Drama tells a story about characters at odds with themselves or with their surroundings. They defend contrasting values. Drama builds up tensions and progressively unravels them before viewers who would be kept alert. Theater portrays complicated tensions before us, as no other literary medium does. These tensions heighten our sense of expectation, and the ensuing suspense thereby reaches its paroxysm. As Professor David Ball stated in his book, Backwards and Forwards, a technical manual for reading plays, he says, people who talk about, or write about, or do theater agree on little. But there is one thing. Drama is conflict. Conflict calls for the audience's identification with the characters, and this identification can be achieved partially or thoroughly. To contextualize and conceptualize a play, to grasp its multi-layered meaning, one needs to consider key contexts, amongst which the time period when the play was written, the playwright's biography, and his or her other works, and plays written by other artists at roughly the same time. Playwrights include stage directions to set up the stage for the play. These notes are cues given to actors to deliver actions or dialogue with specific emotion. They are typically put into parentheses and italics. Sometimes they appear between square brackets. Plays are divided into acts. Each act is further split into scenes. A scene is a partition in which the setting does not change. Greek plays were not divided into acts. The 5-act structure was introduced by Romans and became the convention in Shakespeare's time. In the 19th century, this was reduced to 4 acts. Modern drama favors 3 acts, and contemporary playwrights have displayed a penchant for 1-act plays. Let us now move to the analysis of Riders to the Sea. Riders to the Sea is a 1-act play by John Millington Synge. The Irish playwright traveled for a long time before embarking on the writing journey. His close friend Yeats, the eminent Irish poet, geared him toward the Aran Islands. Mesmerized by the fishermen's life-side behavior, Synge learned their maritime dialect, as well as their intimate relationship to the ocean. It is in this insular setting that he has located the action of his peasant fisherman's story, the tragedy of a community. Concerning the plot summary of Riders to the Sea, the play depicts the tragedy of a lower-class Aran family in the face of the all-powerful sea. Tragedy here is not inherent in human nature. The play is less a tragedy of character than a tragedy of people, as there is no self-destructive tragic flaw or transgression punished with death. The heroine Maria has lost all her male family at the final curtain. Somehow forced by the laws of nature into a tragic maze, the doomed characters have all fallen victims of the cyclic moods of the sea. Riders to the Sea is a classic of the Irish literary Renaissance, which looked to instill a sense of national pride in Ireland in the late 19th and early 20th century. Riders to the Sea is closely modeled on classical tragedies. Here, we shall shed light on how Synge blends classical and modern elements to invent a hybrid style of tragedy. Tragedy depicts the downfall of a noble hero through some combination of hubris, fate, and the will of the gods. For Aristotle, the tragic hero should have an error in judgment, or what the Greeks call hamartia, and need not die at the end. He must rather undergo a reversal in fortune, peripetia, and experience a moment of recognition called an agnoresis. Riders to the Sea is not a tragedy in the Aristotelian sense. The character's downfall is precipitated by the stormy sea, by which they have been victimized. The sea hangs over their heads like the sword of Damocles. The family matriarch, Moria, is more of a pathetic figure than a classic tragic heroine. She's a dignified peasant woman, pigeonholed in her nest, who has embraced her impending doom. Left utterly defenseless after the loss of her dear ones, she counts the departed of her household with an intense blend of pathos and humus. Maria's daughters, Nora and Kathleen, may be regarded as choric voices in the play. This is reminiscent of classical Greek tragedy. The two sisters comment on the course of action, where they also have their share. Kathleen, the eldest daughter, seems more independent-minded. She defends Bartley's decision to venture out into the sea, despite her mother's fear of the unknown. Synge involves his female characters in the decision-making process, a role that has so far been reserved for men. An overwhelming sense of wretchedness haunts riders to the sea from the onset. The character's fatalism slows down the tempo and rhythm of the play, but does not affect its tragic intensity. As regards dramatic structure, Riders to the Sea maintains the Aristotelian classical unities: the unity of time, a single day, the unity of place, the Aran Islands, and the unity of action, human frailty in the face of a hostile environment. The major dramatic action occurs off stage, and yet a tragic feeling is haunting the play as the ghosts of the past do to this Irish family. Synge asserts his Irishness through his earthy portrayal of rural Irish life. Riders to the Sea is set in the Aran Islands, where the insulars are half fishermen, half peasants. The character's pastoral dialect gives dialogue a quality of verisimilitude. The islanders are depicted as archaic people who nurture primitive beliefs. The supernatural element is suggested from the title of the play. The writers being Michael and Bartley. Maria gets a fleeting glimpse of her spectral son, Michael, and prophesies Bartley's imminent demise. The belief in the iniquity of ghosts shows the merging of paganism and Christianity in her mindset. Riders to the Sea is about the movement. More importantly, it is about the life-altering shift that takes place within the heroine's psyche. This makes of the heroine a dynamic character. The elderly mother is left alone with her two daughters, Nora and Kathleen, and her orphan son, Bodley. The Irish family, herein depicted, is regulated by conventional cultural patterns. The rural Irish society is seemingly patriarchal, yet it is paradoxically more deeply matriarchal. At the end of Riders to the Sea, the female characters' means of survival will not be lost in the absence of their male protectors, as wrongly suggested by Maria. Maria's anxiety reflects the impact of the male-centered logic that requires women to rely on male patronage. Through showing that Maria and her two daughters could stand without the crutch of man folk, Singe underlines that women are fit for survival. They even outlive men. Singe empowers Irish rural women by giving a voice to the voiceless. Almost all the males of Maria's family are doomed to remain invisible, thereby existing only on the verbal level in the discourse of their relatives. In so doing, Singe allows women to transform oppressive structures through the power of language, whereas he paints men as vulnerable in the face of death. He shows women as the keepers of the traditional heritage. Women perpetuate the burial ritual, a sacred act that embodies what cannot be captured in word. The peasant women's keening is a cultural way of venting their wrath. This practice is a pagan remnant from the Irish Celtic beliefs that Christianity could not abrogate. The setting in Riders to the Sea determines the overall atmosphere of the play, thus creating a sense of isolation, seclusion, caught in a life and death dilemma in the closed insular system. The character's journey becomes a Darwinian voyage of fight for life. Though the sea remains offstage, it has a haunting presence. Robin Skelton states that the dominance of the sea makes the sea itself into a power, a god. This explains why Singe deifies, divinizes the ocean in his play, which comes to honor the majesty of the landscape. Nature in the play acts through the mighty agency of the sea, which becomes the nemesis against whom the characters strive to maintain their sense of dignity. The sea plays an ambivalent role, as it is the giver and taker of life. The sea becomes the savior and the villain. It also symbolizes catharsis, since water blesses the human soul. Singe's religious skepticism is subtly voiced in Riders to the Sea. Maria's prayers go unheeded despite the priest's spiritual solace. By belittling the priest's status, Singe stresses the gap between the Christian clergy and the Irish peasantry. The priest in Singe's The Tinker's Wedding, a play published in 1909, is also an intruder among the local people. The two plays wink at the faint presence of Catholicism in the Irish countryside. It is crystal clear that the sea has ascendancy over religious authority, which is incarnated in the play by a novice priest who is unnamed, not listed in the cast, and kept off stage. Due to his continental background, the priest is ignorant of the sea culture, which undermines his charisma. He can neither prevent Botley's unsafe journey, nor is he able to counter the threat of the all-devouring sea. If it be true that the priest has no physical presence on stage, his dramatic significance is undeniable, unquestionable. He sustains constant tension between paganism and religion, nature and culture, insular and continental, cults and customs. The ocean in Riders to the Sea is presented as a purging, powerful force. From the very outset, the play builds up tragic suspense toward the moment when Michael's corpse will emerge from the waters. At the end, there is suspense as to whether or not Botley will brave the stormy call of the wild. Botley ignores his mother's pleas. Forewarning is another element of classical tragedy that magnifies Synge's play. Far from being morally blind, Botley is driven by his desires, which no force on earth can impede, not even Maria's faith. Keenly aware of nature's cycles and of the vicissitudes of his own nature, he follows his reason. Riders to the Sea revolves around existential acceptance. Instead of cursing the sea, Maria ultimately resigns herself to living alone. Her experience has changed her mind, thus determining the final tone in the play. In the conflict between man and the sea, the heroine is defeated with honor. Like a deer caught in the headlights, she stands still. One could but relate to her plight, although her passive posture at the sight of Botley's corpse leaves the spectator wishing for a more visceral response. With this concluding statement, no man at all can be living forever, the playwright confers universality upon Maria's predicament. Through depicting the tragic destiny of a modest household in the face of the untamed sea, Synge pays homage to the power of nature. As Florence Ledoux-Sall put it, Riders to the Sea est bien cet hymne à la mer, indomptable, indompté, oriflamme spirituelle et universelle, qui unit dans la vie ou dans la mort les marins de toutes les nations. One is tempted to say that the play is life-affirming. It is through that Maria gains an understanding of life. The sense of enlightenment she has attained illuminates Synge's implied message, namely the restoration of the human spirit by the vital forces of nature. Riders to the Sea stages a native drama of human significance, wherein Synge achieves a timeless appeal. The tragedy of the Irish peasantry becomes that of all men and women who are subjected to unfathomable cosmic forces. The mother incarnates emblematic motherhood. Riders to the Sea could be seen as the tragedy of the humble humanity in the face of the grandiosity of Mother Nature. In a nutshell, Riders to the Sea can be read as it transitioned from hubris, arrogance, into humus, humility. The Latin words humus and homo have a common root and are both organically related to natus. In short, in Riders to the Sea, nature and mankind are cemented by the sea. Thank you very much for your attentive listening. Blessed be.